So I have with me today Caulfield, who I met actually on a beautiful retreat, Deepening the Senses retreat, a couple of years ago, with Eileen Isilwan. I think that's when we first met.
Yes.
Who I've had some really lovely connections and conversations with since, and I really wanted to just record some of our flow when we talk about similar themes that interest us. So thanks so much for being
here. I could be here for a while.
You can be here for a while. So thanks a million for taking the time to do this.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely. Thank you very much.
Recorded conversation. So yeah, we were talking about, wanting to sort of refine and synthesize what it is that we feel is important, and then also allowing some kind of flow. So that's even getting into the themes that we're interested in. Finding that balance between containment and letting our intuitions kind of do.
It's the structure of it all, and then just allowing everything that comes in between that falls through the cracks.
Exactly. That's usually the juiciest part.
Yeah, that's usually whenever it goes off into a tangent.
Yeah, exactly. So, so you are a healer and a heretic, as I see it. So, would you want to maybe describe in your own terms the work that you do in the world?
So my work began as a nurse. I trained in London and I travelled a good few countries in the world, but I worked also abroad. My nursing, I always felt, I suppose, from a young person or as a young person, that I was always drawn to serve and to help and to protect and all of those things. So that innate wisdom, I suppose, was already there, as it is in many of us. I then left my nursing career 5 years ago to be a full-time acupuncturist. I trained with the College of Naturopathic Medicine in Dublin. We had some amazing lecturers who have since left, but they were really incredible. They had 30, 40 years of experience between them, and they really imparted a lot of their life experience and beautiful wisdom and dedication to traditional Chinese medicine with us. I have to say it was very life-changing. We were actually told to forget everything that we had learned. We were starting over. So I had already been in the practice of creating space for people through sort of energy healing and body talk therapy and reflexology and other modalities.
Okay.
But for me, because of my nursing background, there's a sense of we're very programmed. Our training requires us to memorize and to multitask and do that at the highest level. So when I went into traditional Chinese medicine, I actually initially found that very, very difficult, because now I was reprogramming. So the reprogramming has then allowed me, through my own personal development, to really, really trust and open that space. So yeah, I see all walks of life, especially in the time that we're in at the moment. It's a very interesting time where those doors are really opening. People are really prioritizing that space, and they're really valuing their need for nourishing their inner self and creating that space for healing.
So you'd actually already worked in kind of more, I suppose, what they would call complementary alternative healing modalities, kind of while doing nursing, before you trained in.
I suppose about 7 or 8 years before I left nursing, I started training full time, and that sort of became a habit. Once then I started into it, then I saw something else and I continued. So to me, the learning never stops. That's part of my nature. So at the time, I think definitely my ego was involved, in the sense that I need this qualification. I'll have we sort of set up the profile that for the business end of things. But yeah, no, it was really part and parcel of learning a much deeper truth, just really coming into center and really connecting with my own self, my own wisdom, and trusting, really learning how to trust in my own spiritual wisdom, my own spirit guides, my own innate true nature, and becoming comfortable with that.
And so how has that journey been for you in terms of, you know, the challenges that you might have encountered, the doubts, or, you know, different steps along the way? Is this
Well,
a,
they don't ever go away.
pardon?
They don't ever go away. The
Yeah,
doubts,
this is
yeah,
true.
because
Good
we're
thing.
human.
Because
Yeah.
as you talk, there's such a beautiful flow and a kind of a sense of, I can sense the trust, and there's a lovely clarity. You have, and you know, from knowing you, you know, not intimately, but from what I know of you, you do dance, you kind of flow between the two, being able to work within the traditional official parameters, and also really, really trusting and embracing your more intuitive side and the energetics and all of that stuff. So, you know, yeah, I'm interested to know kind of, you know, what it is like behind the scenes when people maybe look at you from the outside and see how well you integrate all these different perspectives. You know
The
what?
doubt definitely comes from, and I mean, I don't actually sit with doubt a lot, but I actually think it's a very important part of embracing all aspects of yourself as a person. You know, I often sort of see two parts to us. You know, the part where we don't question anything, it's just a flow, and it's a true nature, it's our inner wisdom, it's what actually lights us up, and we don't ever question it. It's a feeling, so you can't put words on it. But because I'm very sort of intellectually kind of constantly challenging myself to learn more, I have massive respect for literature and for people that can articulate, which I'm most of the time don't do very well. But I am very consciously, really, really accepting of my own vulnerabilities in that area. Um, I don't actually have that need anymore to fix something. Whereas in nursing or in the medical realm or the traditional sense, we have been very tidy about things. You know, we want things tidied up. We want the problem solved. We want to send people on their way.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a core element of that that I found that I fell out of love with that strategy, because a lot of the little parts in between were actually really missing the connection, the just allowing people to just accept the trauma that was happening, to work through it instead of avoiding it, you know. So that also, for me, when I create a space for someone, it's very much about allowing them to actually go through their vulnerabilities, go through the difficulties, and to not ignore them. Now, interestingly, I can say that now, but there are things that I believe now because I've done the work on myself that I didn't necessarily believe 10 years ago. So there were definitely shadows and challenges and doubts and fears and vulnerabilities and all of those things that I avoided because no one wants to do that work. It's really, really challenging. It really brings everything to the surface. So yeah, I suppose what I'm trying to say is the challenge, the journey, and accepting the challenges along the way, but the inner trust and connection to your own wisdom, your own center, your own heart, that you have to be comfortable with that in order to actually feel peaceful and strong and settled and accepting and trusting in everything that you do, not just in healing, but in your walk of life. Because
So,
you're the adapting that we're actually, I feel they adapt. It's like that saying that I saw, just recently, that you either adapt to the environment or adapt to yourself, to the changes that you're going through, or you die. Part of you dies a little bit, that you actually don't survive in your own being to the full extent of what you are, you know.
yeah, very true. And so, what has supported you to be able to hold space for what's uncomfortable, for pain, for stuckness, for what your clients go through, for what you've gone through? What has helped you along the way?
Many things. It's going to be different for every person because it is innately individual, and we have all come from a different ancestral line, and we're from different ley lines, from different cultural lines, all of those things. So the way that we interpret and interpret and translate and use the filters that we use in our environment are actually can be a massive block, but also they can work with you also. the things that have helped me, I've accessed as many, I've always had an interest in what, I always feel that even if I went to any therapist, regardless of what resonated or not at that time, I always took something away. So I always decided before even going for an appointment with a psychotherapist or with a Reiki practitioner or an acupuncturist or, you know, a women's circle, whatever it was, there was a sense that there is always going to be that mirror coming back on you, that whatever it is that you need to be shown on that day or in that hour, you're going to sit with it. And you may feel on top of the world and feel really, really good about yourself and feel everything's moving, everything's changing. And then you may come from a different appointment and think, oh my God, I'm right back to, you know, I thought I was doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're working with those triggers all of the time. And it just depends on how you translate and filter that information. And I suppose that's kind of where I use a lot of analogies in my treatments with people in order to actually just translate things in very simple language that they'll understand. So those analogies will change depending on the person that's sitting in front of me. I really believe there's a responsibility. I actually feel very strongly about having a responsibility in how we translate information to people. It's not so much about talking and telling someone. It is actually about understanding if they're understanding, you know, and you're only going to be able to do so much with that. You're not obviously going to, you know, you can't do the work for them. But as long as you notice or you understand that something has resonated and you trust in that process on the day, that whatever has come up for the better good of the greatest good of that person.
Mm. And so I guess you having really been on your own personal healing journey and, you know, received healing and experienced different modalities and kind of, you know, being present with your own healing helps you to know what may or may not be understood, or helps you to be present with others then. So it sounds like your own process and your own journey is a real strength in your practice.
It's really important. It's so important. It's actually just vital. And there is no such thing as perfection. There's no right or wrong. It's again, trust and acceptance and forgiveness as well. You know, forgiveness is a huge thing for this year, particularly where things are, the cycle is coming to completion. Really, it just feels like odd ends are dying off, you know. So definitely acceptance, forgiveness, all of these, everything is energy. Just accepting that, you know, things will come back around again, and what hasn't been resolved, if you didn't catch it this time, it'll come back around in another way, you know.
Yeah,
so
it makes you
present. I think it's really asking us to be very present at the moment. It's, you know, just do today.
Absolutely. Well, and on that, I was just going to say actually that it makes me think of grief. You know, it's grief work. It's like whatever has not been resolved, you will circle back, and there's unfinished business always in terms of the human loss, and the growth is kind of parallel. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the most natural, healthy thing.
It's so important as well that it's difficult. It's very difficult to talk about things. I think for anyone listening to something that like the things that we're talking about today we're all very positive, because we've been through a process, a long journey and processes, many processes and ups and downs, where literally you feel like you're trudging through quicksand. You know, you could spend 3 years thinking, what is going on here? Am I ever going to get to the end? You know, but it is, all you can do is day to day. You can't expect anything else. We're not actually guaranteed tomorrow, which is actually quite liberating in a way, because it just brings you right back to center. It brings you back to present moment and just do today. But at the same time, it's worth mentioning that, you know, while listening to people talking about, oh yeah, it's very simple, you just do this, this, and this, and this, you know, it's that can seem very unreachable for people, you know, and the whole idea of abundance and, you know, thinking up your dreams and all of these things, and meditating and letting go and trusting, it's very, very tough if this is new to you. And if you're working with clients like that, and that are genuinely really notice and appreciate the need for their change, it can feel very daunting, you know. There's a lot of fear about change and stepping forward and actually coming back to themselves, you know.
Absolutely. But then I suppose if you can accompany them in that because you've been to those places within yourself, then that is what makes, you know, our kind of work so beautiful and so meaningful, is that you can be there with someone while they're going through the parts that are so difficult to tolerate.
Yes.
Hard. So your sort of, I suppose, your sense of humor, you know, and your the surrender that I feel from you, the sense of like you kind of, yeah, surrender and lightness with it, comes, I guess, from having been in the dark and in the dark nights of the soul. And it's not, you know, what I feel from you is not a sort of a happy clappy spiritual bypassing vibe. It's sort of like, it's mental, it's pretty messed up.
There's no bypasses. There may have been a few at the beginning, but there definitely wasn't once you were on the board. That was it.
You have a remarkable capacity to talk about, you know, experiences in your life that have been pretty full on and pretty challenging and pretty intense, with such a philosophical approach. And I don't mean that in a kind of just abstracting and like describing it mentally. It's like you've been through it and integrated it, and you're able to see the bigger picture, but like also integrate it into your personal life and kind of draw out the gold, you know, from the wound or from the shock or from the losses, and kind of keep moving forward. With the gifts that come from these lessons that we would maybe rather not have, but there are also beautiful aspects.
It can be very, very difficult, and I think the thing is, you have to accept that the difficulty is there for a reason. Your body is constantly trying to protect you, okay? So when, you know, people have physical symptoms and post-trauma or otherwise, and even the way that trauma is defined, you know, when people say trauma, because of the sensationalism of sort of media, trauma is like a bomb that went off, or a car crash, or something that, but it's actually, everyone's filter is different, you know, so we all translate that as a different thing. And often it gets buried, and it's something that is blocked out, that's actually forgotten about. So the body, again, has protected you from it, like, or it's found a place for that to go. So it often then doesn't come up for many years. And it's something that someone, again, has learned to adapt to.
Yeah. And so what we pathologize is actually a very, very healthy response, you know, like the stress response, the trauma response is all not something we need to sort of fix and pack up and move past. Like that's our aliveness and our humanity. And so it's very hard when there's such painful symptoms or incomprehensible, you know, stuff showing up, and winding circuitous healing journeys that are never ending. But there's always something there that's trying to be communicated. It's always, there's such wisdom.
So true. And communication is my favorite word. I love it. It's really incredible how the body illustrates, you know, difficulties that are happening. And the other thing to touch on as well, that's just coming to me, I'm getting these little downloads, but like, it's okay to have problems, you know.
Breaking news.
Yeah, I know. It's really, really actually okay. It just depends with, you know, what is it you're going to do with them, and you have choices, and those choices are okay. It doesn't matter that you don't reach enlightenment mode by the time you're 40 or 50 or 80 or whatever. It's actually not a race to the finish line. It's just a process, you know. So it's not about perfection or tidying things up. It's about working with them. And we're often, in many, many walks of life, people are giving like circumstances and traumas and surprise moments in their life and illnesses that teach them so much about themselves. You know, and I know that sounds, it may be argued by many that that's just bananas, but you can look at it as many things, you know. There is no set one way of defining anything, really. It's just all, time is relevant, and energy it's just the way that the body manifests, you know?
Yeah, and I think there's so many nuances to this point, you know. I think it can be interpreted through a lens of wounding, actually, and of blame, and simplified into, you're not doing X enough, so you're getting punished with this symptom. But that's actually interpreted through a very wounded kind of, you know, disempowered lens, and it can be a fine line between kind of victim blaming or just, you know, flinging that response. And I think usually it's coming when people don't have the capacity, probably haven't done their own healing. And we, you know, we all come in and out of different modes of being in ego or being more kind of in our soul self or compassionate self. And the only response to that really is compassion and presence and being with someone, not wanting them to sort of, you know, glean all the lessons and you know, breeze through all the life lessons. It's a tricky topic because it can be, I think, interpreted in different ways. As you say, people have different filters.
And it's interesting because I had to learn how to get tough, you know. I'm quite a gentle person. I think sort of naturally that is something that's there. But I actually had to learn how to just tell someone to get stuffed, you know. Just you do have to learn both sides of you, you know. You have to not learn but embrace it. And there are certain muscles in our body that we need to try harder to flex, you know, and to strengthen. And for some people, well, for many people actually, and myself included, I've had to work with boundaries, you know, and with protecting my space, and realizing that giving is receiving, and it works in both ways. But again, trust comes in there too, that you just know that you're in the right place at the right time. But actually the people that I have in my life are solid, that I understand that, you know, there's an alignment there. Now that's probably going to change as time goes on and life happens, and we're living on a planet through these times that are going on at the moment and in the present moment. But you just embrace that it's just all part of the process. But as long as you come back to center and you know your inner nature, you trust your true nature, and you have a good relationship with yourself, that it actually gives you more energy for others, but you won't be giving your energy away because you're tight with your energy, you know.
And so is that something that has helped you in terms of kind of being more tapped into yourself, your intuition, like trust, building self-belief and self-trust, having those kind of people around that are solid in your life, and having not necessarily like a tribe in the sense that we might think, but just these people that are, yeah, supporters of you being a healer and being, you know, working in a way that's maybe seen as unconventional? Or
yeah, it's a funny question. It's a funny question because I'm not quite sure. I can't speak for anyone else. I just do what I do, and I just learned to just go with that. It's actually none of my business what how other people perceive or translate, or it has hit a nerve with people before. But that's okay. Again, it goes back to that's actually fine. It's what was for you. A lot of things that I believed in maybe 15, 20 years ago, I don't believe in them anymore, you know. So I mean, I think that you have to, if you don't create an acceptance and a compassion around the idea of someone changing, then there's actually no room for them to change. So that's where sort of the words that you use and the sentences that you use, your narrative, your story, and even the affirmations or the sentences that you use in daily life are actually sort of your daily affirmations. So it's becoming a little bit more a little bit more present and a little bit more conscious of what you're actually setting your life up to be. And as well, again, not sort of, as you say, spiritually bypassing, like there's a difference between saying something and believing it. And sometimes it may work for a person that they have to say it often enough to believe it. And then it might not work that way for someone else, you know. It might actually be writing something, or there's certain things that it sort of, the light bulbs go on of things that I have heard for many, many years, but I actually only realize now that I'm only embodying it now, you know, that I'm only actually resonating with it now. So
yeah. Just to pick up on what you were saying there before, there was such a sense of kind of sovereignty and clarity of like, it's none of my business what anyone else thinks, you know, what is misaligned kind of just needs to fall off really, and there's no point in clinging on. But I'm wondering, you know, whether there are peers or mentors or people either, you know, in Ireland or abroad, or just people that you've encountered in your life who have helped you move into that more and more, or inspired you, or given you a sense of not being alone in this journey or this?
Oh yeah, I mean we're actually blessed. YouTube is amazing because
Do you
there
choose
is
a tribe?
I literally go down a YouTube hole and I'm there for ages. But no, it's fantastic because when you surround yourself with people that are jumping in and out of your like of your vibration, or of your way, your vibe, let's say, they always have something to offer, and there's lots and lots of podcasts and incredible healers in the world that I actually don't even know where I would start to list them. There are many. And I don't actually really put myself into a certain bracket. It may, there are certain people that have a really an amazing ability to articulate, and Russell Brand is one of those. He's incredibly the flow with his words is really amazing, and I love the acceptance that he has given himself around how he goes there and the vulnerability that he shows up with. He is being himself, and it's a really it's very heartwarming to see that. It's very nice. And there's many I listen to so many different interviews that I see spirit in everyone. So I mean, I see the love and the source energy, let's say, and I'm not crazy about using very sort of spiritual terms because I'm always sort of working with people that possibly don't understand those. I actually feel like it's really important to keep the language very simple because we're living simple lives, and in our own, the words that I use for my own internal work are, the divine, the source energy, the spirit, all of these things. But for me, outwardly in the work that I do, I drop those words in from time to time, but I also help use other words to sort of help people integrate it. Because not everyone is everyone's a healer. Everyone has the potential to be one and to live as one. But I mean, that could be a painter or someone that, climbs poles, or, someone that teaches in school, someone that paints, someone that is a carer for the elderly, all of these different sort of modalities in life. There shouldn't actually be a separation between, oh, this person is, the healer. We should actually recognize it, or try and just recognize the beauty in our interactions in every day, that it's actually there all of the time.
Absolutely. And what about closer to home? How has it been for you in your personal life, in terms of your connections with people, or as you got more and more into this kind of area of work that was maybe not so easily understood, say, by some in your family or your friends, or how is that?
My family are pretty good, actually. They're very accepting, and they just allow everyone to do themselves. But yeah, there's no doubt at the beginning. I definitely, regardless of how they felt, I definitely felt a little bit of vulnerability, a bit of shame, a little bit of, gosh, I don't know where am I supposed to fit here, am I supposed to be this person all of the time? Like back in the early days, I struggled with that a lot, actually, because it was quite draining. But again, I think that's where I wasn't sure about my boundaries. And I hadn't fully accepted the fact that even though I saw the good in everyone, not everyone at that time maybe was good, they may have not been doing good things, yeah.
I'm just curious about what part of what you were doing was the most challenging for you, because everyone has different challenges in terms of doing this kind of work, working with energy, honoring your intuitions, changing jobs, all that kind of stuff. Does your family sound pretty, it's not that usual for me to hear that. And I know I might be biased as a psychotherapist, but
I think they were scared whenever I said
support that you received. I can really see the outcome of having come from a family that was like, everyone does their own thing. Every family has their different, areas in which they are better or less perfect. So I'm not making any assumptions about your family from the outside, but
there's no doubt. I mean, there's holes everywhere in everyone's families.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's life, It's.
But they do sound very supportive of you, So which parts were those kind of sticking points that were vulnerable for you to step into?
It was all for me. I actually feel like, again, I tried to stay in my own lane. I was always very independent. Um, I was always very, very independent as a very
Yeah, I
young
can sense that.
person. But
Like, was it calling yourself a particular thing or identifying with a particular modality or, just
I
being
found
heard,
that very
having your voice
difficult.
heard? You did?
Yeah, I found it very difficult to actually define myself as one thing. And I think that's because I don't like being boxed in, and
Yeah.
that's just part of my I suppose archetype. But I love the idea of sort of shifting from one thing to another and multitasking and constantly um having a conversation in my head but also doing three things at the one time. But that's how I move and that's how I
Mm,
operate in life. And I think that yeah, that's it. That's my filter. That's just the way things. That's how I live. But my family have been amazing. I mean, I love my family very, very much. And it's interesting because we're a big family and we're all very, very different, and we're all very independent and very, you know, we sort of keep in individual lanes, and at the end of that, there's a huge support then in that because we've all just accepted and allowed ourselves to do whatever it is and be at whatever stage we're at. So, I mean, there are many conversations that come up that we don't all agree on, but there's an acceptance around that, and there's kind of an education. Now, I'm not going to paint an airy fairy picture for you because when Christmas comes around, like in every house, it's very it can get a little intense.
colorful, yeah. But I
Yeah.
do really hear a lovely support that you've received. That's been a really
Yeah.
nourishing foundation for you to go out into the world and be able to do you. Like, that's a really lovely start.
I don't think I give them any choice, Delphine. I think I just
Okay. This is
I
your
actually
very
think, yeah.
independent spirit.
I think that once I sort of made up my mind that that's what I was doing, I just went with it. And there was a lot of fear from that side. And there were a lot of personal challenges that I was going through over the last sort of 10 years that I really, it was just you had to do it by yourself. No
Mm-hmm.
one else could do that stuff for you. So, yeah, I don't think I give them any option. They just had to accept that I was leaving a full-time career with a pensionable job.
Yeah,
But, all of those securities, that no, it wasn't for me. So yeah, I'm happy that my independence has led me in the direction that I'm in.
absolutely. You're where you're meant to be. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
for sure. And so just, as we're kind of closing up our conversation, you were talking earlier about staying present, staying present in whatever is coming at you, whatever is, as you move through the flow of life with grace and sometimes not so much grace. But what helps you to be kind of to stay in your body, to stay present, to stay anchored here in this earth plane that is kind of hard to, be a human in often.
There are many things. I mean, daily rituals are really important for me. And as well, variety is very important for me. So if I feel like I'm doing the same thing all of the time, it's for me it gets a little bit boring. But on the other hand, I actually do really like routine. Meditation is obviously a big part of who I am and the different forms of meditation. So while you're walking or while you're sitting, I often daydream. I go off into a little bubble and allow myself to go there. Excuse me. Whenever I was working in a sort of very structured based job, there wasn't a lot of time for that. And I actually realized at one stage, I think about 8 or 9 years ago, that I kind of lost the ability to daydream, and it actually came up in a card reading one day with a friend, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, you're not daydreaming at all." And it hit me like a thunderbolt. It actually really did, because I was always a huge dreamer, and just off thinking and dreaming.
Mm.
I think it's a huge part of our creativity that is lost in the busyness and the filling the spaces of our daily life. I think spaces are actually really important, and quietness. Again, it comes back to sort of how you feel in yourself, because if you're not feeling in yourself, well, if you're not feeling well in yourself, then those spaces can be quite turbulent, you know, and they can feel very, you know, challenging, and it's often a space where darkness comes in. But again, it's important to sit with that and do something with it. But for me, rituals like walking, fresh air, nature, I mean, our connection to nature is just huge. It's really, really important. The appreciation of that. Allowing myself to just connect with my higher wisdom and noticing how I'm feeling, actually just observing it, noticing it, feeling that way, and then, you know, allowing myself to either stay there or move on. And really, I sort of addressing or appreciating what are just thoughts, and what is something that just keeps coming up, what's a pattern that keeps arising, you know.
That's so lovely. I think it's an aspiration for a lot of people, you know, for a lot of us, and it's not always possible, but I can hear and witness how your capacity to stay with what's very uncomfortable and unpleasant or just weird or unresolved or confusing, you know, you never censor that. Like, if, you know, whenever I've been in contact with you, you'll be quite straightforward without judgment. And so then when you're in a joyful or positive or, you know, like yummy place in your life, it's all the more like you're really in contact with that as well. So being able to be present with the full spectrum of states and emotions is a gift.
It really is. And I think gratitude, daily gratitude, for me, it's most of what I do. I think that it just underpins everything, because it's just so love based, and, you know, it's really great. I'm just very grateful for everything. Now, it's very difficult to be grateful at the moment for a lot of us, including myself.
I was going to ask, do you ever get like frustrated off with the gratitude thing?
This is the thing. Sometimes you do actually feel like, you know, you have to let the swear words out. You need to just get real. You need to you have to get stuck into the turbulence of energy as well. Like, so, and just being yourself. So if you're just not having a good day and you're pissed off, then, you know, that's it.
That's the truth. Yeah.
It's your truth. It's where you are. But I feel that the one thing that really gets me by a lot is my sense of humor. I tend to see the funny side and the ridiculous side of most things.
I think
even if it's staring me in the face and it's absolutely horrendous, I often will just think, oh my God, what?
Yeah. That's such a gorgeous quality. I think that your appreciation of absurdity is really maybe like something that I really connect with you on. And just like
it's important.
bracing against something and resisting and stuck in the kind of the, you know, whatever whether it's self-flagellation or blame or just acting out, and then it's just like humor, the absurdity, the surrender at some point.
I mean, it's probably, I mean, if I'm being totally honest, it's probably a distraction too. Like, so I could actually just be burying my head in the sand a small bit, but there is.
That's also part of it, you know, of our like wonderful skill set as human beings, is to be able to like soften the experience of life with humor, and kind of not narrate it. I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but like mediate our experience and step away from it through the lens of humor, or through whether it's avoidance or whatever it is. Like,
it's a great
humor
word.
is so nourishing. It's so nourishing.
It really is.
I actually think a lovely kind of interim stage to soften into gratitude. It's like I can't go straight from, you know, being in a kind of harumph, squished, you know, state into gratitude or any kind of sense of appreciation of what's in my life. But when there's humor in the mix, it just really softens into the heart space, I find.
It really does. And I actually remember a period of my life that and I mean, you know, there's going to be ups and downs and you know, all the rest, like, and that's everyone's life. But I do definitely remember a period of my life where I was trying to fix things with my head so much that I really lost my way, and I actually I missed an awful lot of the crack that was actually happening in front of my eyes, because again, you know, you didn't have A, B, C, and D, or, you know, things weren't working out, or you were feeling this way, and, you know, there's all of that turbulence. So I actually really, really have such compassion for people that are actually going through that at the moment, particularly because the constructs of what they've been used to and the routines that they've been used to have sort of come crashing down a little bit, you know, or they're changing, or what was working for them before isn't working anymore. And particularly in people that have been in workplaces where they've booked the weekends away and they just think, oh, I just have to put up with this now for another 3 weeks, and then I'll be off for my weekend away, or I have my holiday book, I look forward to that. Whereas all of those things are being taken away from people now, and it's fabulous because it really gets you to own it. It, you know, it really makes you face, okay, where am I at here? I'm not happy in my daily life. What is missing? What creativity can I use? You know, what can I do for myself outside of work? Or should I be in this workplace?
And
So,
what needs to be grieved as well. Like there's so much loss in that in parallel.
Yes, yeah.
Part of the new possibilities arising.
It's scary. It can be really scary. Yeah. It can be really, really scary for people. It's a massive loss, and you're deciding on it. So you're actually deciding to move away from it, and that's even harder. In many ways, something is, yeah, in many ways, when something's taken away from you, you have something to direct your anger and your frustration to. But whenever, and that's what's happening also collectively, like there's a lot of that changing too, where people are blaming and sort of looking to the external environment instead of their own internal environment. But there are many things that help us daily. Everyone is going to find a different way, but I definitely feel creativity, humour, music and dancing. I mean, who doesn't like a boogie, you know? And
I do know what to do. But
putting the music on in the kitchen and just dancing. I do it on a Friday evening. I do it most mornings. Like, you know, it's just great. It just heightens it helps you remember who you are as well. You know?
It's so grounding. It's like a return to the core, but it's also really expressive and just shifts up the energy. So potent. And it's, you know, sometimes it's those simple practice embodiment, like natural things that we do that bring us home that, you know, we resist because they almost seem too simple or it couldn't possibly be so potent. But it's they're small but powerful ways to do this life experience and stay in one piece.
Just to not take it too seriously. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. I have a sense, you know, that you're very connected to your inner child, your playful inner child. What when you think back to the child that you were, do you recognize yourself in her? Do you feel that you've come a very long distance from
I think I'm probably becoming more of a child now as I'm getting older. I'm going backwards. I've got a huge appreciation for it. I think it's very, very important. But I mean, I'm a very playful family as well. There's many of us, and but I really have a massive appreciation for it. I think it's very important. I think it should never die. The child in you never dies, you know, unless you just stop feeding it, you know.
But she's still there anyway, running the show, you know, covertly. So she might as well. Include her and meet her needs. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's great. It's really fun.
So is there anything else that feels like you want to share, you know, before we conclude our delightful conversation that could go on for much longer time?
I suppose just to say to people, or for anyone that is if it is useful, to just allow yourself to adapt, you know. It can be really difficult, and call in your wisdom. And I started writing as well. I think writing and journaling is sort of the brain dump that happens on paper is fabulous, because it's a scribbling. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just words. So it's again another tool it's another access point for allowing energy to flow and just release and sort of gain this clarity that you may not have. And also just not to sort of explore how in your life, if there are things you're suppressing, if there are things that you're actually haven't opened the space for yourself to talk about. I believe in opening the space for talking. I actually think that if on the road to discovering who your crew are and who your friends are and who your family or your sort of your solid friends are, on that road, it's really important to access someone in your type of role, that sort of that handhold, that kind of support, that sort of allowing to talk about the shame, talk about the feeling, talking about the vulnerability, and how empowering that is and how strengthening that is to give yourself a voice around those things. Yeah.
Gorgeous. I can really see how when people, you know, come to you for acupuncture, that you talked before about sneaking in the treasure. There's just so much more to the work that you do. You know, that sometimes our mind is like a lot of the time our mind is resistant to how healing will come in or to what it is that has to be done. It's very fixed. So as you say, like doing the brain dump, being able to come into spaces where you're supported to drop into more of yourself, or to come and have space with somebody like you, where you're facilitating people, you know, turning inwards to more and more of who they really are. There's such a treasure in that, and it sometimes does have to be kind of snuck in, but
yeah, it's so true. And I think the heretic, like we spoke about sort of the meaning of heretic, and it is becoming, it's, I suppose, more functional term now, for me anyway, in the way that I can see it in the world, is that instead of, it was once the way that healers were in a sort of a segment, you know, off on their own, or, you know, people that did that kind of work were just like, oh yeah, sure, that person, you know, go to that person. Whereas I think in the time that we're in at the moment, it's actually becoming more functional. I think people are starting to realize that everyone has that ability to just be with themselves and to impart wisdom and to help others. And the heretic is very much someone who has sort of their own opinions contrary to structures and rules and religions and doctrines that exist in their society. So it's a lovely time to witness these changes and these sort of structures and pillars and foundations through the industrial ages, and, you know, with the schooling and all of these things, all of these sort of structures are all changing, you know, because the youth of our society is not responding in the way that is happy, you know, and creative. And so all of these things are changing. So it's actually becoming more important to educate people on and supporting them in, I suppose, waking up a little bit to themselves, you know, and to what's possible.
To ourselves as multidimensional beings, you know,
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
energy and yeah.
And actually just recognizing that very small things that you do when you're in your truth and in your center, they have a massive impact on people, you know. So it doesn't matter if you're a speaker on TEDx or, you know, on stage somewhere at a convention, or just sitting behind a counter at a shop, you know, or a checkout. If you're in your truth and in your power and in your own person, those impacts are really, really important.
It can be felt. It really is powerful, and it trickles out. And I would not underestimate how powerful it is in this world to be kind of like, it's almost like, you know, I was going to say energy warrior, but it's not even warrior. It's like for us to be anchoring our own energy and frequencies of a different way of being, you know, with ourselves. That really ripples out. And sometimes I feel like I should be, you know, the mind,
I know,
more engaged in kind of social justice work or stuff that I did in the past. But it's like, it's actually really potent in one-to-one relationships. Those are the most powerful, often, conversations that really ripple out when we've done our own healing, and we can be present with other people in their healing, in ordinary everyday interactions. That does have a powerful effect. So
it's amazing, because whenever you look back to, I know we're probably going way over time right now. And this is
I know, I'm like, as we close off this conversation, half an hour later.
We start talking, and then 3 hours later, it's like, okay, I need to get
open up a few tabs here, you
know. But it's very, very, it always interests me with our grandparents and our great grandparents and our ancestors that came before. You know, when you think back to that time, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have YouTube, you know, they didn't have anything. They had very, very simple routines and rituals in their life. And there was a lot of darkness, like actual darkness and inner darkness, but they created so much joy through dance and movement and talking and, you know, playing games and just their own creativity and their own wisdom. They weren't separate from nature itself, they were part of it. So I think it's really, I always struggle. I think I said it to you before that I always find it very difficult to define myself, and even being defined as a healer, like it's fine now, but you know, it used to be really kind of, I just didn't know how it felt, you know, it didn't sit
Yeah.
well with me. That part of me hadn't developed properly,
Mm-hmm.
that I just accepted whatever. But again, like that, I think we spoke before about sort of the term of sort of experts in fields and in areas,
Yes.
and this kind of status that's built around sort of where you come in the world. That definitely has its place, but only it has the most powerful place whenever you have an integrity and a moral compass and a connection to your own true nature,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what direction you're leading yourself in,
Yeah.
and you're always learning through others, accepting, treating people with kindness and compassion, but you have your boundaries. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's a dance between all of those things. It's
Yeah.
really yeah.
Yeah, it's not a compensation kind of expertise or a sort of a trying, you know, it's not trying to achieve something. It's when that's backed up with that inner anchor, inner connection that has integrity, as you say, and is true, you know, is authentic. You can sense the difference. So there's such a beautiful kind of you can absorb so much like lovely you know sensations from being around people who are anchored in who they are, and there's not a mismatch. There's always some degree of mismatch, of course. We can't, you know,
Yeah.
be entirely wild creatures in this world, and we have to adapt to each other. But you just sense the difference. You know, there's a different energy emanating,
Yeah.
as there is from yourself, um, in all
Yeah.
the time. And in the conversation today, thanks for bringing, you know, for sharing with us how you really feel about things, and
No problem. Thank you so much for inviting me.
to
Lovely.
articulate very clearly. I would like to refute what you said earlier about communication and
I think once you get into a role, yeah, it just carries.
flow. So yeah, thank you for being an inspiration as well. You know, as someone who is in our flow and is walking that walk of honoring, you know, who you know you yourself to be, and what you really want to do in the world, and
Thank you.
moving forward. So for me, it's inspiring to see other people do that as well. It gives me energy and gives me, you know, hope and
And
confidence.
likewise, Delphine, you've done great work, and this is incredible. You're really stepping into what's needed.
Yeah,
So
more of these
yeah,
juicy convos.
and more portals and platforms for
Exactly.
opening up to thought processes, and especially among our women, you know.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
it's
It's lovely
fantastic.
to co-create these things with each other. So thank you, Catherine. We'll leave it there for this
Thank you
time,
so much.
and I look forward to future conversations with you and see where you're
Thank
at.
you so much. Thank you. See you
Sure.
soon.
Bye.